Deny, delay, depose. That's how they keep all the delicate necks of the poor huddled masses firmly under their boots. The room is immaculate, almost sterile in its perfection, save for the rich scent of aged leather and the faint hum of electronics concealed within its walls. The cabal does not tolerate mistakes. Not in this room, not in their empire. Mistakes draw attention, and attention is the one thing they cannot afford. At the head of the long, polished table sits Adrian Cole, the de facto leader of the cabal. His expression is calm, unreadable, but his steely eyes sweep across the gathered executives with a weight that makes even the most confident among them squirm. Each member represents the apex of their respective industry. Big oil, big agriculture, big grocery, big shopping. But tonight, the focus is squarely on the healthcare branch. The air is thick with unspoken tension as Adrian finally breaks the silence. Ryan Bronson, he says, his voice a low, measured rumble, has become a liability. At the mention of the name, a murmur ripples through the room. Eyes dart toward a man seated near the middle of the table, his sharp suit doing little to hide the sheen of sweat on his brow. Ryan Bronson, CEO of Celestial Care Health Systems, shifts uncomfortably in his chair. "You've embarrassed us, Ryan," says Marissa Teague, the elegant and ruthless head of Big Agriculture. Her manicured fingers tap against the table rhythmically. "You were sloppy, brazen. Insider trading? Really? We have rules for a reason." Ryan clears his throat, his voice cracking slightly as he tries to defend himself. "It was a calculated risk. The market conditions—" "No!" interrupts Adrian sharply, the word cutting through the air like a whip. "It was stupidity. And now it's not just you who's at risk, it's all of us." The collective weight of the accusation bears down on Ryan. He knows better than to argue further. He's seen what happens to those who cross the cabal, or worse, those who jeopardize its secrecy. "Public scrutiny is a virus," says Charles Redding, the grizzled titan of Big Oil. He leans forward, his deep voice carrying a note of menace. "It starts small, contained, but let it linger and it spreads, infects everything. And Ryan has just opened a wound." There's a grim murmur of agreement. The cabal is built on discretion, its power rooted in the shadows. The public doesn't need to know the extent of their control over healthcare policies, fuel prices, food supply chains, and more. They only need to comply. Ryan's careless actions threaten to shine a light where there should be none. Adrian exhales slowly, his fingers steepled before him. "We cannot afford to appear weak," he says. "The solution must be decisive, public, and final." Ryan's breath catches. The words hang in the air, and their implication is clear. He looks around the table, hoping to find a shred of sympathy, an ally willing to stand up for him. But all he sees are cold, calculating faces. The cabal's strength lies in its unity, and tonight, that unity is against him. "Adrian," Ryan begins, his voice trembling, "I can fix this. I can make it right." "You've already made it right," Adrian says coolly, leaning back in his chair, "by serving as an example." The conversation turns clinical, as if Ryan is no longer present. Plans are discussed with chilling efficiency. Marissa suggests a plausible narrative for the media to latch onto. A disgruntled client, enraged by Celestial Care's lack of coverage, taking matters into their own hands. Charles recommends the use of an assassin, someone professional and anonymous. A shadow in a hooded black winter coat and gray backpack. No loose ends. "The profit declaration meeting," Adrian says, his tone final. "It's public, predictable, and symbolic. The timing is perfect." Ryan's protests die in his throat. He knows there's no escape. The cabal has decided his fate, and their decisions are irreversible. Later, as the meeting adjourns, the members filter out of the room, leaving behind only whispers and the faint scent of power. Adrian lingers, staring at the empty chair where Ryan had sat. He retrieves a small, gold-plated pen from his pocket and begins to jot down notes on a sleek tablet. "The casings," he murmurs to himself, "should bear a message." He pauses, considering the right words, a phrase that embodies the very essence of their dominion. His lips curl into a faint smile as he types, "Deny, delay, depose." A warning, a mantra, a legacy. Meanwhile, Ryan stumbles out of the building, his mind racing, his life, his empire, everything he's built. It's all about to collapse. He wants to run, to disappear, but he knows there's no use. The cabal's reach is infinite, their grip inescapable. His death will be a spectacle, a calculated move to protect the greater whole. He thinks of the countless lives his company has ruined. the denied claims, the desperate families, the patients who died waiting for approvals. For the first time in his life, Ryan feels something unfamiliar. Regret. But it's fleeting. Survival instinct takes over, and he resolves to fight, though deep down, he knows the fight is already lost. In a dimly lit apartment across town, a man methodically checks the contents of his gray backpack. A pair of gloves, a silenced pistol, a small vial of acid to erase any trace of his DNA. He does not ask questions. He does not care about witnesses. He never targets the innocent, and certainly never without payment. Besides, the assassin is a ghost, his existence known only to those who pay him, so witnesses are inconsequential. He does not exist. As he zips up his backpack, his phone buzzes. A single text message lights up the screen. Profit declaration meeting, 6:45 a.m. Don't miss. The man smirks. He's never missed a target. He pockets a set of polished brass casings, freshly engraved with the words deny, delay, depose. A poetic touch, he thinks. His employer's instructions had been clear. Make it look like vengeance. Make it look personal. But above all, make it look clean. The morning of the profit declaration meeting dawns cold and gray, the streets of the city slick with the remnants of an early winter drizzle. The towering glass skyscraper hosting the event gleams ominously, its reflective surface swallowing the dull sunlight. Security is tight, but not too tight. After all, this is a carefully crafted spectacle. The cabal wants the illusion of safety, not the reality of it. Inside the building, Ryan Bronson rehearses his talking points in a plush green room, his nerves a volatile mix of defiance and dread. His PR team hovers nearby, oblivious to the death sentence looming over their boss. As the CEO of Celestial Care Health Systems, Ryan is no stranger to public scrutiny, but today feels different. His pulse quickens when he remembers Adrian Cole's parting words from the cabal meeting, "You are an example." As he tries desperately to keep up the facade of this being just another meeting, he hopes that Adrian was just trying to scare him, that nothing will actually happen at the meeting. But as those words echo in his mind, "You are an example." Dread settles deep. Adrian does not make idle threats. Across the street, the assassin waits. He blends seamlessly into the crowd, just another pedestrian bundled against the chill. His black winter coat, hood pulled up, and gray backpack are nondescript, his face obscured by a black gaiter scarf. He's holding the takeaway coffee cup, the heat warming his hands while he continues scanning the building's entrance with unhurried precision. The meeting is scheduled to start at 7 a.m. sharp. Ryan Bronson is expected to make a brief appearance outside before entering the venue, a standard PR move designed to reassure investors. The assassin's instructions had been specific. One shot, clean in public. The inscribed shell casings in his pocket feel heavier than usual, though he pushes the thought aside. This isn't his first job, and it won't be his last. The minutes tick by. Cameras flash as journalists and attendees gather outside the building, jostling for position. Protesters have lined the sidewalks, their signs a chaotic sea of anger. Stop denying care. Healthcare greed kills. Ryan Bronson equals blood on his hands. Ryan watches them from the green room window, his stomach churning. He knows these protests are nothing new. He's faced them before, smiled through them, dismissed them in private. But today, they feel closer, louder. The weight of his decisions and the lives they've cost presses down on him in a way it never has before. His assistant taps his shoulder. "Mr. Bronson, it's time." He nods, adjusting his tie in the mirror. His hands tremble, and he clenches them into fists. You're still alive. You're still in control. Outside, the assassin moves into position. He sets down his coffee cup on a nearby bench and pulls out his phone, pretending to check a text. In reality, he's watching the reflection in the screen, tracking Bronson as he steps out of the building, flanked by security. The protesters roar, their voices a cacophony of rage and desperation. Ryan hesitates for a fraction of a second, and in that instant, the assassin moves. The gun is out of his coat in a fluid motion, the silenced shot barely audible over the din of the crowd. Bronson stumbles, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. His security detail springs into action, but it's already too late. The assassin doesn't run. He melts into the chaos, his weapon disassembled and tucked away, but not in the gray backpack. That is full of the second message, one that the mercenary thought added to the red poem. while the engraved shell casing lies gleaming on the pavement, catching the light like a macabre calling card. He carries the backpack full of Monopoly money with him. Monopoly, the game where you only win if you suck every dollar away from everyone else. The extra ounce of irony makes him smile. He'll just leave this little Easter egg somewhere in the park so the police can feel like they've actually done something. The crowd freezes, stunned into silence, and then pandemonium. The news breaks within minutes. Breaking: CEO of Celestial Care Health Systems assassinated outside profit declaration meeting. Suspected gunman leaves ominous message: deny, delay, depose. Over the next few days, the coverage of the incident takes a wild about face, an Uno reverse that no one saw coming. Television anchors dissect the event with breathless urgency, while social media erupts in a frenzy of hashtags and hot takes. Hashtag Ryan Bronson, hashtag Robin Hoodie, hashtags The Adjuster, and hashtag Healthcare Justice trend simultaneously, as well as comments like "My sympathy requires prior authorization" and concepts of thoughts and prayers, and "I can't afford my glasses, so I'm afraid I didn't see anything." Each post a mix of shock, outrage, and grim satisfaction. But the narrative doesn't unfold the way the cabal expects. At first, the media echoes the cabal's intended story: a disgruntled client pushed to the brink. But then the cracks begin to show. Independent journalists dig into Ryan Bronson's history, unearthing a damning trail of corruption and cruelty. A mother speaks out: "My daughter died waiting for the surgery that could have saved her life. Celestial Care denied our claim 3 times. A grieving husband posts a video: "Ryan Bronson killed my wife just as surely as if he'd pulled the trigger himself. She was denied her cancer treatment until it was too late." A whistleblower leaks internal memos: "Approved nothing over $1,000 without explicit denial review." Public sentiment turns on a dime. Ryan Bronson is no longer a victim. He is a symbol of everything wrong with the healthcare system. And the assassin? He becomes a legend. It starts with whispers on anonymous forums where the shooter is dubbed Robin Hoodie. The name sticks, spreading like wildfire. Soon he's the Adjuster, then he's America's boyfriend as women gush over him, and a dozen other monikers that paint him as a folk hero. This wasn't murder, one viral post declares. This was justice. The cabal watches in stunned disbelief as the narrative spirals out of their control. Ryan Bronson's death was supposed to send a quiet message to other titans of industry to maintain decorum, but the people, the huddled, silently enslaved masses they all rule over, well, they are interpreting it in a way the ruling class never anticipated. It is less than a week since the silence shot hit its mark, and the protests are starting, and with each passing day, they grow. Crowds swell outside Celestial Care offices across the country, demanding change. Activists carry signs bearing the words "deny, delay, depose," not as a condemnation but as a rallying cry. The phrase is reclaimed, turned into a weapon against the system that created it. Healthcare companies scramble to contain the fallout. Policies are quietly reversed. Claims that had been denied for months are suddenly approved. Medications and procedures become accessible to those who had all but given up hope. The recently rolled out policy from a different healthcare company that treated anesthesia like a mechanic's labor calculator of acceptable surgery length for payout is suddenly repealed. The public notices. For the first time in years, people feel a glimmer of power, and they don't intend to let it go. Adrian Cole watches the chaos unfold from the safety of his penthouse. His jaw tightens as he sifts through reports from his PR team, each one worse than the last. "They're cheering for Bronson's death," one of his assistants says, voice trembling. "The people, they're calling for more." Adrian's eyes narrow. He doesn't respond, but his mind is already racing. The cabal cannot afford another mistake. "Deny, defend, depose" starts showing up on t-shirts and graffitied on bridges as the wave of unrest begins subtly, but it grows with a force the cabal cannot ignore. At first, it's isolated. A sudden surge in public protests outside health insurance offices, spurred by anger over years of neglect and exploitation. Employees of Celestial Care, still reeling from Ryan Bronson's death and trying to get used to the plans and policies of the CEO who replaced him a mere 26 hours later, face the wrath of angry crowds chanting "deny, delay, depose." Windows are smashed, slogans are spray painted across corporate logos. The words are no longer just a message, they're a movement. For every broken window, there are 10 stories of human suffering unearthed. Faces flash across social media. Children denied cancer treatment, elderly patients left to die in understaffed care facilities, young adults saddled with impossible medical debt. Each story fuels the growing narrative. The system is broken, and the cabal is to blame. Inside the cabal's secretive boardrooms, the panic is palpable. People are calling for more assassinations, hisses Marissa Teague, her carefully crafted mask of composure slipping. She slams her tablet onto the table, its screen filled with headlines celebrating the mysterious assassin. Robin Hoodie, the hero we didn't know we needed, reads one particularly damning piece. "We're losing control of the narrative," growls Charles Redding, his face red with frustration. "One death was supposed to go unnoticed, heard once and quickly forgotten. Instead, they're seeing it as an invitation for revolution. We need to act before this spreads further." Adrian Cole remains silent, his steely gaze fixed on the glowing cityscape outside the boardroom window. The cabal's strength has always been its ability to adapt, to manipulate the system in its favor. But this is something new. "It's healthcare now," says a nervous pharmaceutical executive, his voice shaking. But the whispers are spreading. They're talking about all of us now. About oil prices, toxic chemicals in food they can't afford to buy, unsafe working conditions for low wages, and the corrupt politicians who allow and profit from it. In fact, the only thing they have stopped complaining about is gun violence. I'm sure you've noticed the uptick in ammo sales. A man leaning against the wall next to the window chuffed happily, ice-clinking glass while swirling his whiskey. An angry glance from Adrian silenced the gun manufacturer and his clinking glass. "Let them whisper," Adrian says at last, his voice cold and measured. He turns to face the table, his presence silencing the room. "The masses don't have the power to organize on their own. They'll burn out once they see how small their victories really are." "And if they don't?" Marissa asks, her voice sharp. Adrian smiles, a thin predatory curve. "Then we remind them who's in control." But the cabal's confidence is misplaced. As healthcare and insurance companies scramble to quell public outrage, they inadvertently stoke the flames. Policies are repealed at an unprecedented pace. Patients who had waited years for treatments suddenly find their claims approved. Life-saving medications are made available without the usual bureaucratic hurdles. The changes are framed as a gesture of goodwill, but the public isn't fooled. "They're scared," one viral post declares. "They know we can take them down. Let's keep pushing." The effects are immediate and undeniable. Lives are saved. Families are reunited. People begin to hope again, not because they trust the system, but because they've realized they can force it to bend. And all the while, the myth of Robin Hoodie grows. In a dimly lit bar in an unnamed city, the assassin watches the news. His face is shadowed by a baseball cap, his presence unremarkable among the other patrons. He's heard the whispers, seen the headlines that have turned him into a symbol. He doesn't see himself as a hero. He was paid to do a job, and he did it. But now something stirs within him. The bartender switches channels, landing on a panel debate about the growing unrest. A polished anchor asks, "Is this just the beginning of a larger revolution?" The assassin listens, his fingers tightening around his glass. He doesn't know the answer, but part of him wonders if it's time to find out. The cabal's next move is calculated. Adrian Cole convenes an emergency meeting, the room thick with tension. "We need to get ahead of this," he says, his voice like steel. "If we can't control the people's anger, we'll redirect it." Marissa raises an eyebrow. "You want to give them another scapegoat?" "Not another," Adrian replies, his lips curling into a grim smile. "The same one, Robin Hoodie." The smear campaign begins almost overnight. Leaks of classified documents suggest the assassin is tied to extremist groups, painting him as a dangerous anarchist rather than a folk hero. Paid pundits flood the airwaves, urging the public to condemn the violence, to focus on constructive reform instead of chaos. But the public doesn't buy it. For every fabricated story the cabal pushes, the people push back with their own truths. Survivors of the healthcare system's cruelty continue to come forward, their voices louder and more united than ever. Activists adopt the image of Robin Hoodie, their homemade posters and digital artwork spreading his likeness across the nation. Meanwhile, in the heart of the healthcare branch, panic turns to desperation. Executives begin approving claims without oversight, trying to stem the tide of bad press. Their efforts backfire spectacularly. The public sees the cracks in the facade, realizing just how quickly change can happen when the powerful feel threatened. "They've been holding out on us for years," says one viral video, a tearful mother holding her son's newly approved medication. "If this is what fear can do, imagine what we can do next." At another cabal meeting, the tension reaches a breaking point. "This is spiraling out of control," snaps Charles Redding, slamming his fist on the table. "The masses are emboldened. They're calling for blood, and it won't stop with healthcare." Marissa Teague nods grimly. "I've seen the reports. Protesters are blocking shipments from slaughterhouses and oil refinery facilities. They're organizing boycotts of the big grocery store chains. Even Congress is starting to pay attention. We may not yet have enough of them onboarded to get ahead of this." Adrian remains silent, his expression unreadable. "What do we do?" asks the younger CEO, his voice trembling. Adrian stands, his movements deliberate. He walks to the head of the table, his eyes cold and calculating. "We do what we've always done," he says. "We adapt. We survive." "How?" Marissa demands. Adrian's lips curl into a faint smile. "We remind them what fear feels like." Outside the meeting, the shadows of resistance grow. In the cities, whispers of coordinated action begin to take shape. The people, emboldened by their small victories, start looking beyond healthcare. They talk of boycotts, strikes, and walkouts. They talk of revolution. And somewhere in the darkness, the assassin sharpens his focus. He's no longer just a hired gun. He's something more. A symbol, whether he wants to be or not. Something shifts inside him. He is no longer the ghost. He is Robin Hoodie, the adjuster. And now that the protesters are adopting his look, he is nobody, and he is everybody. Meanwhile, the cell phone on Adrian's table vibrates. Annoyed at the disturbance, he puts down his first cup of coffee of the day, and after seeing who it is, answers, grumbling angrily, "What do you want?" "I don't think this ends with healthcare," Marissa answered, her voice trembling. "The masses aren't stopping. They're looking at us now, at all of us. They are calling him a hero, talking about how they'd give him back his mask like the kid in Spider-Man. They are talking about Project Mayhem and the French Revolution. They are making merch for hell's sake." Adrian leans back in his chair, his gaze distant. "Then it's time we remind them why we're untouchable." The cold, metallic air of the city hangs heavy with anticipation. The people are no longer merely protesting. They are mobilizing. Across neighborhoods and cities, the image of Robin Hoodie has become an emblem of defiance. Stencils of a hooded figure with a gray backpack appear on walls, bridges, and sidewalks. Protesters adopt his uniform. Hooded black winter coats, gray backpacks, and black gaiter scarves. They are an army of nobodies, and by being nobodies, they have become everybody. The assassin, Robin Hoodie, the adjuster, sits in a crowded subway car, invisible among the masses. His once solitary existence feels porous now, as if the walls around him have dissolved. Everywhere he turns, he sees reflections of himself. Young women in black hooded coats clutching their backpacks, fathers leading their children through the city streets wearing black gaiter scarves. He knows it wasn't supposed to be like this. His job was done. He had no plans for what came after, no desire to step into the chaos he'd inadvertently created. But now, he feels the shift within him, like a second heartbeat echoing against his ribs. Robin Hoodie has become a symbol, and symbols are not passive. The cabal's moves grow more desperate, their attempts to reclaim the narrative increasingly brazen. They double down on their smear campaign, releasing fake profiles of the so-called Robin Hoodie to the media, a violent extremist, a foreign agent, a petty criminal. But the public is no longer listening. Adrian Cole, perched in his glass-walled office, reviews the latest intelligence reports with a grim expression. "They're not just protesting anymore," his head of security says, pacing nervously. "They're coordinating. Supply lines are being disrupted. Employees are walking out en masse. The unions are starting to back them." Marissa Teague slams her phone onto the table. "Do you know what I saw today? A photo of one of our board members at a private gala with the caption, 'Untouchable?' They're coming for us." Adrian's jaw tightens, his mind working furiously. The Cabal has always operated in the shadows, their power unspoken but absolute. But now the shadows feel crowded, their invisibility stripped away. "They're adopting his look," Marissa adds, her voice trembling. "They're adopting him." Adrian turns away from the table, his gaze cold. "Then we need to ensure the symbol they idolize is destroyed." Across the city, the people move like an unstoppable tide. The protests are no longer isolated, they are synchronized. Local organizers use encrypted messaging apps to coordinate strikes and marches. Massive rallies shut down highways, ports, and corporate headquarters. The healthcare reforms meant to pacify the public have had the opposite effect. For every claim approved, another story of denied care surfaces, fueling the anger. It's no longer just about healthcare. Big oil executives find themselves trapped in their limousines as protesters block refinery entrances. Grocery store chains face boycotts after viral images expose dumpsters full of wasted food outside their stores. Farmers, long exploited by big agriculture, take to the streets with their tractors, shutting down major thoroughfares. And always among the sea of demonstrators are the black hooded coats, gray backpacks, and black gator scarves. Robin Hoodie isn't leading the charge, but his presence is felt everywhere. He watches from the sidelines, blending into the crowds, his face as anonymous as theirs. He knows he should disappear, let the legend live on without him. But something pulls him back, a nagging sense of responsibility. At a rally in the heart of the city, he lingers at the edge of the crowd, listening to the speakers. A nurse takes the stage, her voice trembling but resolute. "They said they didn't have the money to approve our patients' treatments," she says, her voice amplified over the roar of the crowd. "There wasn't money in the budget to hire more staff to keep nurses in a safe patient ratio. But look at their profit reports. Look at their billion-dollar bonuses. They've been denying us life to line their pockets." The crowd erupts into cheers, fists raised in solidarity. Robin feels the weight of her words, the truth of them. He had been paid to pull a trigger, but the fallout from that single act has exposed the rot at the heart of an empire. This isn't about me, he thinks. It never was, but it is now. Inside the Cabal's war room, tensions are boiling over. "We need to make an example," Adrian Cole says, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Find one of their leaders, one of these so-called organizers. Arrest them, discredit them, make the people see what happens when they rise too high." Marissa shakes her head. "It won't work. They're not centralized. They don't have leaders. They have him." She points to a photo of Robin Hoodie taken at a recent rally. The image is blurry, but the figure is unmistakable. Adrian's expression hardens. "Then we take him out, publicly." The Cabal's plan is swift and ruthless. The next day, a special report breaks across all major news networks. Surveillance footage, heavily edited, appears to show Robin Hoodie meeting with known terrorists. Leaked emails, fabricated but convincing, claim he orchestrated not only the assassination of Ryan Bronson, but a series of planned attacks against the Cabal's infrastructure. "This is their hero," the anchor says gravely as the footage loops on screen. "A man of violence and destruction." The Cabal deploys private security forces to protect their assets, but their presence only stokes the public's fury. Protesters face tear gas and rubber bullets, yet they don't back down. The security details do their jobs, pushing back the angry mob and protecting their charges. The Cabal's assets, CEOs and shareholders, governors and legislators. The security teams are men and women in black, anonymous and invisible in plain sight like so many others that the upper echelon failed to see. Robin Hoodie watches the chaos unfold from a safe house, the TV's flickering light casting shadows across his face. The Cabal has drawn a line in the sand, daring him to cross it. And he knows he will. He slips on his coat and grabs his new gray backpack. Inside are the tools of his trade, tools he had planned to leave behind forever. But now, he realizes, they are his burden to bear. They want a villain, he thinks. I'll give him one. The next rally is the largest yet. Hundreds of thousands flood the streets, their voices a roar that shakes the city to its foundations. At the center of the march, Robin blends in. Black hooded coat, gray backpack, black gator scarf. As the crowd thunders, Robin prepares to reveal himself, but then the energy changes. It starts small and ripples out. One person takes a moment to check their phone notifications, then elbows the closest person and shows them. The person next to them checks their phones. The chanting cacophony fades into murmurs and chatter as the news headlines start rolling out. Shopmart billionaire found dead at five-star restaurant was the headline. Underneath the picture of a coroner's van read the words, "Poison suspected." A black cloth napkin with a stylized picture of Robin Hoodie and "Deny, Delay, Depose" stenciled on it, found on his lap with Monopoly money under his plate. Police have detained restaurant staff for questioning. But that isn't the only headline. There are more. The news outlets and social media reporters can hardly keep up with the breaking news of what appears to be a coordinated effort to effect real and lasting change. The crowd's murmurs grow louder as each new report hits different phones at different times. Did you hear about the oil exec whose car ran off the road? There was Monopoly money in his wallet. Mine says that a pharmaceutical CEO committed suicide. His bodyguards say he was drunk, ran and jumped from the balcony of his penthouse suite before they could stop him. Remember that billionaire who said clean drinking water isn't a basic human right? Looks like he tripped next to his pool, hit his head, and drowned. Was it Robin Hoodie? How could it be? How could he do that in Colorado but also be in California? There is another one in Florida. Was that the yacht explosion? No, it was a mansion fire. Whose yacht exploded? The noise started to grow as everyone started sharing, then laughing. Then there were cheers and celebration. More reports come in. Robin listens in as he reflects. Just a few short weeks ago, they hired him to take care of an embarrassment and inadvertently birthed Project Mayhem from a fictional Hollywood landscape into reality. They hadn't gotten rid of the education system quick enough. Too many people remembered the lessons of "Let them eat cake" and the French Revolution. Robin smiles. He doesn't matter anymore. He is still a ghost. He is unneeded from here on out. He is nobody, and he is everybody.